Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my Endless Diary Tales channel? Thank you so much. When my boyfriend of 7 years personally pushed me onto the bed of the production team leader, Ethan Miller, I woke up as if from a dream. In my previous life, the childhood sweetheart who had been engaged to me for 7 years ended up falling for an educated young woman, Claire White, his so-called white moonlight. To keep our relationship, I begged my family to secure 2 permits so that Daniel Shaw and I could return to the city together, forcing him to go back with me. But because he wanted to remain in the countryside with Claire White, he dared to drug me and deliver me into another man's bed. Because of that, I lost my virginity and even carried Ethan Miller's child. When I finally decided to accept my fate and try to live quietly with Ethan Miller, I overheard him telling Daniel, "Don't worry. I'll take care of Emily Wynne for the rest of my life. I'll make sure she never has the chance to destroy your happiness." Only then did I realize Ethan Miller too was deeply in love with Claire White, Daniel's white moonlight. To let Claire marry my fiancé, he didn't hesitate to ruin my life. Fine. None of you want to return to the city, do you? Then I'll go back myself. The moment I opened my eyes, my whole body burned hot and dry as if set on fire. Outside I heard the voices of my boyfriend, Daniel Shaw, and the production team leader, Ethan Miller. "Mr. Miller, sorry to trouble you," Daniel said. "As long as you agree to marry Emily Wynne, she'll be trapped in the countryside forever with no chance of returning to the city." "It's no trouble at all," Ethan replied. "As long as Claire can be happy, I'll do anything." A fragment of memory flashed in my mind, and the overwhelming fury nearly drove me insane. Daniel Shaw, my childhood sweetheart, my fiancé of 7 years, because he wanted to stay in the village with Claire White, his white moonlight, was afraid I would return to the city, expose everything to his parents, and ruin both his and Claire's future. So he schemed to destroy my purity. And Ethan Miller, a blindly infatuated man, wanted to help his mistress Claire White steal my fiancé, even daring to think of forcing himself on me. By now my whole body felt feverish. My pale skin flushed an unnatural red. There was no doubt that the tea-boiled eggs Daniel Shaw had just given me had been drugged. I couldn't stay here. Forcing myself upright, I staggered to the back window and threw myself into the small stream behind the house with a heavy splash. The village stream wasn't deep. Jagged rocks lay beneath the water. As I fell, a sharp stone slashed across my arm, blood pouring out. The stabbing pain snapped my mind clear. I didn't dare cry out for help. In this era, people were harsh and unforgiving about a woman's chastity. If Ethan Miller heard me, jumped in to save me, and the two of us ended up soaked, disheveled, and holding each other in the stream, then even if I didn't want to marry him, I would be forced to. Fortunately, I had known how to swim since childhood. I let the current carry me downstream, quickly pulled myself to shore, wrung my clothes dry, and ran straight to the Educated Youth's assembly point. After changing into fresh clothes, I suddenly heard voices outside the door. Daniel Shaw and Claire White. "Claire, don't worry," Daniel said. "I'll definitely stay here with you. If you don't go, then I won't go either." But I heard Emily Wynne already asked her family to get 2 permits to return to the city. "If you don't go with her, your parents will be furious," Claire White urged. "Don't worry," Daniel said confidently. "Emily Wynne will never be able to return." Before he could finish, I pushed open the inner door and stepped out. The moment Daniel saw me, his eyes widened in shock, his face frozen in disbelief. "Emily, weren't you with Ethan Miller? You and Ethan Miller? What's going on? What about it?" I asked coldly. "No, nothing," he stammered. "I just heard Ethan say you fainted at his house. I was planning to take Claire over there to check on you, but I didn't expect you'd come back first." I sneered inwardly. So that was his plan, to take Claire to Ethan's house to catch me in bed with him, wasn't it? According to their scheme, as long as they caught Ethan and me together, I would lose my purity and have no way out except marrying him. Even if I had the permit to return to the city, it would be useless. Thinking of their plan collapsing, Daniel's expression darkened to the extreme. I stared at the two of them standing so close together, my gaze growing colder with each passing second. In my previous life, I had rushed to drag Daniel Shaw back to the city, not only to save our childhood relationship, but also because I feared that if he kept entangling himself with Claire White, his entire future would be destroyed. Back then, as soon as Claire was sent down to the countryside, Daniel followed her, utterly enchanted by that kind of girl. My jealousy burned like a fever. Finally, I couldn't stand it anymore and asked my older brother to investigate Claire White's real background. The result left me stunned. Claire couldn't return to the city because her father had once betrayed the nation's military secrets for money. Even though her mother later publicly declared she had severed ties with her husband, trying to make a clean break, being the daughter of a traitor left her no choice but to be sent down to the countryside as an educated youth. Daniel's parents were both researchers at the Academy of Sciences, and they had always needed to keep their distance from families like Claire's. If Daniel kept clinging to her, not only would his career be ruined, but his parents could be implicated as well. When I was young, while my parents were constantly busy with work, Daniel's mother often let me stay at their home and treated me like her own daughter. In my previous life, I couldn't bear to watch Daniel ruin his future. Nor could I stand to see his parents dragged down with him. So, after discovering Claire had deliberately hidden her background, I begged my family to get 2 city permits. Naively, I thought if I brought Daniel back to the city, then with distance between them and time passing, his fleeting infatuation would fade on its own. But I never expected that my good intentions would turn into a catastrophe for myself. The old saying was true: never interfere with another person's karma. In this life with Daniel Shaw, I decided to respect his fate. I said nothing, simply staring at them in silence. Claire awkwardly pulled her hand from Daniel's and muttered resentfully, "Daniel, opportunities to return to the city are rare. You should go back with Emily." When Daniel quickly grabbed her hand again, his voice firm, he said, "I already told you I will never return to the city with Emily. Claire, if you still don't believe me, then tomorrow I'll go with you to the commune office and register for marriage." Claire looked at him with trembling emotion, then turned to me, her face full of hesitation. "But what about Emily? I heard you two had an engagement since childhood." Daniel panicked and rushed to explain. "That was just something our families joked about when we were kids. What era are we living in now? Who still believes in childhood engagement pacts?" Daniel Shaw looked at me, his face tense, urging me with his eyes as if begging me to confirm what he had said. I gave a bitter laugh inside. When we were first sent down for labor, Daniel and I weren't assigned to the same place. He was the one who went out of his way to ask for us to be placed in the same village. Back then, he held my hand and even joked that I was his fiancée, the one he had claimed since childhood. He told me if we weren't assigned together, and if I were wooed away by some village boy, he'd cry his eyes out. Yet now, not even a year later, for the sake of another woman, he could so easily deny the years of youth we had spent growing up together. "Daniel Shaw, if this is your choice, then I will respect it." I lifted my head, smiled faintly, and said to Claire White, "Daniel is right. That so-called childhood engagement was just a joke between our families when we were young. There was never any romance or engagement between us." My words made Daniel breathe a sigh of relief, but his gaze at me grew complicated. He had assumed I would cling to the so-called engagement as an excuse to hold on to him. Yet now my decisive release left him flustered, unsure of how to react. He glanced at me, testing carefully, and asked, "Then what are you planning to do with those 2 city permits?" My heart tightened. So Daniel still wasn't at ease about letting me go back. After all, our families lived close to each other. If I returned alone, his parents would surely wonder why he hadn't gone with me. At that moment, I realized with bitter clarity that even Daniel himself knew. He absolutely couldn't let his parents find out about his relationship with Claire White. I remembered vividly how in my previous life it was for this very reason that he schemed to push me into the arms of Ethan Miller, trying to force me to stay in the countryside. Pretending to be calm, I answered casually, "Since you're not going back, there's no point in me returning alone. I plan to sell the 2 permits to someone else. After all, plenty of educated youths are desperate to return to the city." When I said I intended to sell them, Daniel's expression visibly relaxed. But Claire White, standing beside him, shot me a spiteful glance and said mockingly, "City permits are worth a lot these days, aren't they? Emily, I'm so jealous of you. Just by selling one, you won't even need to go down to the commune to earn work points, unlike me who came to the countryside empty-handed." Daniel's heart ached as he wrapped his arms around Claire's thin figure, and then turned to me, speaking calmly. Emily, you're not short of money. Once you sell those 2 permits, lend me some, won't you? Winter's coming and Claire has nothing with her. I want to buy her 2 quilts, some warm shoes, and a padded jacket. Claire gazed at him with grateful eyes, then deliberately cast me a triumphant look before pouting coquettishly. Daniel, I don't want to wear those bulky village cotton jackets with ugly floral prints, or those rough padded boots. Buy me a pair of warm leather boots instead, and also an army coat and a windproof hat. Okay. Daniel muttered calculations under his breath, then nodded. With the prices now, selling 2 city permits should fetch around 400 yuan. That'll be enough to buy you an army coat and leather boots. Overjoyed, Claire squealed and threw herself into Daniel's arms. Instinctively, he held her tight, but when his gaze accidentally fell on me standing nearby, it was as if his arms had been burned. He immediately released her and stammered nervously. Emily, don't misunderstand. Claire and I aren't what you think. I smiled gently and said, Daniel Shaw, you don't need to explain so much to me. After all, we're just neighbors. Aren't you afraid Claire White will misunderstand? I said calmly. Daniel Shaw reflexively lowered his head and sure enough saw Claire's eyes already brimming with tears. He panicked and hurried to comfort the woman in his arms, not even bothering to say another word to me. He merely reminded me offhandedly, once you sell those 2 permits, remember to give me the money quickly. The 2 of them finally left. My whole body felt exhausted, the wound on my arm throbbing with numb pain. The clothes I had just changed into were soaked through with cold sweat from the inside out. I went to the clinic to have the wound stitched and get medicine. Then, instead of returning straight to the village, I detoured to the state-run canteen first. I hadn't expected that. As soon as I walked in, I saw Daniel Shaw, Claire White, and Ethan Miller sitting together at a table, eating and laughing happily. The moment he saw me, Daniel froze, then quickly stood up. Emily, you came to the commune. Why didn't you tell me first? I glanced at the bicycle parked in front of the canteen and couldn't help but let out a laugh. That bicycle had been brought down from the city by my brother for me when I was first sent for labor. Back then Daniel, afraid I couldn't ride, had even joked that he'd take me everywhere. From that day on, the bicycle that originally belonged to me had been used by him. And what happened? Ever since Claire appeared, the back seat had become her exclusive spot. Daniel hadn't carried me on it even once again. Thinking of how I would soon be returning to the city and couldn't take the bike with me anyway, I decided it was better to reclaim it. I pointed at the bicycle and said calmly, Daniel, I'll need the bike for the next few days. I'm taking it back. Claire immediately exclaimed in surprise. What? That bicycle isn't Daniel's? Daniel's face turned awkward, and he explained in a low voice. Back then, my family forgot to apply for a bicycle purchase coupon. This bike was brought down by Emily's brother for her. In front of his white moonlight, he couldn't continue brazenly occupying my bike any longer. I didn't bother sitting down to eat with the 3 of them. I handed over my grain coupons, bought 4 meat buns, then got on the bicycle and rode off decisively. My retreating back made a nameless panic rise in Daniel's chest. Vaguely, he felt that Emily Wynne was no longer the same as before. She no longer clung to him at every moment, nor cared whether anyone else was by his side. The next morning, I pedaled to the production team in the neighboring village. There, Zachary Tang, a classmate from high school who was also an educated youth, greeted me. His family was well off, and as soon as he heard me say I had a city permit for sale, he immediately agreed without hesitation. 300 yuan, no bargaining. But don't give me the money directly, he said. I'll give you my home address and you can send it by post. I sold the city permit I had originally planned to save for Daniel Shaw. After that, I returned to the commune and sold the bicycle on the black market for 120 yuan. Daniel had been eyeing my savings. I took all of that money, plus over 200 yuan my parents and brother had sent me, and mailed it all to my brother. All the food coupons, fabric coupons, sugar coupons, and meat coupons I had been saving, except for a small amount to get by for a few days, I also took to the black market and sold off. The money I got was just enough for the train fare to go home. This life without me secretly supporting him. I wanted to see whether Daniel Shaw could still make his white moonlight live as comfortably as she had in our previous life. After returning to the village as expected, Daniel Shaw came to borrow money from me. Emily, Didn't your brother send you plenty of grain coupons and meat coupons before? You can't possibly use them all up by yourself. Just lend me 30 caddies of grain coupons, a few caddies of meat coupons. Oh, and give me some fabric coupons and sugar coupons too. Claire didn't bring anything with her when she came down to the countryside. I want to take her to the cooperative to buy a few sets of clothes and some brown sugar to nourish her. Daniel rattled on without noticing how my expression was growing colder. Seeing that I stayed silent, he thought I was jealous. Smug in his heart, he still pretended to lecture me. Emily, are you jealous? I admit that before, I really couldn't tell the difference between family affection and love. But it wasn't until I met Claire that I finally understood what true love is. Even if you and I can't be husband and wife, in my heart, you'll always be the little sister I cherish the most. Now hurry and fetch the coupons. Your sister-in-law is waiting to use them. Next time I visit home, I'll return both the money and the coupons to you. I let out a small laugh and calmly spread both hands. You're too late. The money and coupons I didn't need, I already sent all of them to my brother. Daniel's face immediately darkened. Your brother is in the military. He has food, housing, everything provided by the army. Why would he need so much money and so many coupons? My smile widened. What kind of thing to say is that? You're allowed to fall in love, but my brother isn't. He's 3 years older than you. It wasn't easy, but the organization finally introduced someone to him. I think he'll be getting married soon, so of course he needs money and coupons. That's why I sent everything to him first. Daniel clenched his teeth, swallowing his anger, and asked through gritted teeth, something this big. Why didn't you tell me beforehand? I looked at him in surprise. Daniel Shaw, our families aren't related by blood. You yourself said we're only ordinary neighbors. Why should I have to report my family matters to an outsider like you? Struck speechless, Daniel's face flushed red. Then, as if something occurred to him, he suddenly gave a cold laugh, his eyes full of scorn. Emily, you're obviously jealous. You still have feelings for me. That's why you're so jealous of Claire. You knew perfectly well I promised her new clothes and shoes, yet you deliberately sent all your money and coupons to your brother just to make me lose face in front of her. Isn't that right? I was so furious I laughed. Daniel Shaw, do you think you're made of gold? That everyone who sees you must fall in love? Let me tell you the truth. This time my brother asked me to return to the city so he could arrange a blind date for me. He's already found someone in his unit and asked for my opinion, and I agreed. So you don't need to worry. I won't stand in the way of your so-called great romance with Claire White. Hearing that, I plan to go back to the city for a blind date. Daniel's face gradually sank. You're going to the city for a blind date? Why didn't you tell me? I burst out laughing. Why should I tell you? What relationship is left between us? Daniel had grown used to me always being gentle and tolerant with him, never once expecting that one day I would use such a sharp mocking tone against him. His expression changed drastically. He looked at me, then suddenly let out a cold laugh. Fine, you said it yourself. Just don't regret it later. After speaking, perhaps afraid I'd continue mocking him, he turned his head and left in a hurry, almost as if running away. I no longer cared about the tangled mess of love and hate among Daniel Shaw, Claire White, and Ethan Miller. With only 3 days left before my return to the city, I decided to take things one step at a time. I took back everything I had once prepared for Daniel Shaw. He suffered from hereditary asthma, and before we were sent down to the countryside, I had worried he might fall ill without medicine. So, I had begged around and gathered half a suitcase full of both Western and traditional medicine to treat and prevent his attacks. At that time, imported Western medicine was incredibly difficult to buy. I sold all of it on the black market, not leaving behind a single pill. Daniel's personality was withdrawn. In plain words, arrogant. He looked down on the villagers as if they were nothing. After being sent down, he offended more than a few people, both openly and in secret. In the past, I had feared that if he made enemies, they might cause trouble when the time came for him to process his return to the city. So, I secretly sold off the gold fountain pen my father had given me, using the money to buy cigarettes, wine, good tea, and rare candies. Whenever Daniel caused trouble, I would hurry to smooth things over, bribing and apologizing to each person one by one. How laughable! Daniel thought he was respected for his outstanding talent. But he had no idea that every ounce of respect had been bought with my money and my gifts. Those things I had already given I couldn't take back. But at least they hadn't gone to waste. At the very least, my relationships with the villagers were far better than his. I gathered the rest of the things still in my hands and sold them cheaply to the villagers, casually telling them that I was about to return to the city to get married, and that from then on I would no longer manage Daniel Shaw's affairs. The elders of the village, having lived most of their lives, understood instantly. In the past, I had treated Daniel as my fiancé, so when he caused trouble, of course, I had to clean up after him. But now, everyone in the village knew perfectly well that the delicate, beautiful newcomer, Claire White, had bewitched him so completely that he no longer even saw the fiancé beside him. Some of the village women even clapped their hands and praised me for being smart, saying I hadn't tied myself to a crooked tree that had already betrayed me. I spent 2 days giving away or selling off everything I couldn't use. Half gifts, half bargains, until all was cleared away. On my last day before leaving, I went to the commune to buy some local specialties, intending to send them to my parents and brother to taste. Unexpectedly, I ran into Daniel Shaw at the post office. He was there to pick up a parcel, and Claire White was following right behind him, wearing a loose floral cotton jacket that didn't suit her at all. The moment she saw me, Claire's expression froze and guilt flickered in her eyes. Guilt over what? Very quickly I had my answer. Daniel came out of the post office carrying 2 large packages. Perhaps because the parcels blocked his view, he didn't notice me standing right by the roadside. He was too busy bragging to Claire. "Claire, you've got new clothes now." I wrote to Emily's brother, told him Emily's cotton jacket had been stolen, and asked him to send an army coat and 2 pairs of leather boots right away. Look, not just an army coat. There's also a brand new windproof hat, 2 pairs of sheepskin gloves, and 2 wool sweaters. Emily has plenty of clothes anyway. More than she can wear, so you can just use these. Before he could finish speaking, Daniel finally realized I was standing just a few steps behind him. In an instant, shame and humiliation flooded his face, turning it scarlet. I could hardly believe it. The boy who had grown up with me since childhood, my so-called childhood sweetheart, had rotted to such a degree. Without a change in expression, I stepped slowly toward him, then slapped him hard across the face. The slap rang out across Daniel Shaw's once handsome, refined face. "Daniel," I said coldly, "you've taken from me so much you can't let go, haven't you? And now you even dare to impersonate me, writing letters to trick my brother into sending things so you can use them to feed your mistress. If you still have a shred of decency, return everything my brother sent me right now." Faced with my furious demand, Daniel's face turned from green to white, shame making him tongue-tied. Yet his hands still clutched the parcels tightly, unwilling to let go. "Emily, I know it was wrong to trick your brother, but can't you just treat these things as me borrowing from him for a while? You and your brother aren't lacking any of this, but Claire is different. She's poor and she's proud. She'd never ask her relatives for help. You have a brother, but she only has me." I stared at him silently. "Daniel Shaw, if Claire White only has you, then you should think of a way to take care of her yourself. Why use my things to win her favor? I'll say this one last time. Either you return everything my brother sent me right now, or I'll go to the police and tell them someone impersonated me to steal parcels from the post office." The commune wasn't big. The moment word spread that someone had committed fraud at the post office, a crowd quickly gathered to watch the commotion. Embarrassed, Claire White slipped quietly away, leaving Daniel standing there alone with the parcels on his shoulders. Daniel Shaw, who always clung to his false pride, now looked like a monkey in a cage. As the crowd stared, humiliated and enraged, he barked, "Emily, do you really want to take things this far? Don't you care at all about the years of friendship between our 2 families?" I gave a short laugh. Our 2 families were nothing more than neighbors in the same housing compound. We're not even related. What friendship are you talking about? Daniel froze. How can you say there's no bond? Don't forget we were engaged as children. Engaged? I arched a brow and cut him off coolly. Then do you dare admit that engagement to me right in front of Claire White? Daniel, I don't like men who two-time. You've already chosen Claire, so from now on, it's best that our 2 families keep their distance. At the very least, don't go borrowing the title of my fiancé to beg my family for money and goods. Your parents are high-ranking intellectuals. Stop disgracing them. My words stomped all over his dignity, grinding his pride into the dirt. His face turned ashen with fury. Breathing hard, he suddenly threw the 2 parcels at my feet with a heavy thud. Take them then. Take them all, Emily. You'll spend your whole life clinging to money. How could you ever compare to Claire? She may be poor, but she has integrity. And you? All you ever talk about is money and coupons. Shameless. The weight of the packages slammed into my shins, making my toes go numb with pain. But I didn't so much as flinch. I simply watched in silence as Daniel stormed off in anger. In that moment I almost laughed. Did he really believe Claire White was some lofty noblewoman? Fine. Let's wait and see just how beautiful his days will be once he stays with her. In the end, the 2 big parcels my brother had sent were carried onto the train by me and Zachary Tang together. Zachary, the pampered son of a bourgeois family, grimaced under the load as if he had swallowed hot peppers. He even joked that after helping me haul all my luggage home, he would definitely come to my house for a free meal to make up for it. By the time the 2 of us finally lugged everything back to my family's door, what greeted us was nothing but a cold padlock on the gate. I scratched my head in embarrassment and gave him an awkward smile. My parents both work at the Research Institute. They're always busy, rarely ever at home, I explained. Hearing that, Zachary Tang immediately straightened up, his expression turning respectful. So your parents are scientists building the country's future. You should have told me earlier. Come on, let's go to my house for dinner. As he spoke, he urged me to unlock my door first so we could put the luggage inside. Fortunately, before leaving for the countryside, I had brought a spare key with me. After placing my belongings safely in the house and locking up carefully, I was about to follow Zachary home for dinner when I suddenly looked up and saw Daniel Shaw's mother standing nearby. Auntie Fuang, I greeted politely. Emily, why are you back by yourself? Didn't Daniel return with you? She asked, her eyes full of expectation. Facing her gaze, I didn't hide anything anymore. I told her the whole truth, how Daniel had met Claire White, fallen for her at first sight, and decided to stay in the countryside with her instead of returning to the city. After all, Uncle Shaw and Auntie Fuang had treated me kindly since childhood. Daniel deserved punishment, but they were innocent. If possible, I only hoped that this time my warning could help them avoid being dragged down by that woman, Claire White. When Auntie Fuang heard that her son not only fell in love with, but even intended to marry the daughter of a traitor, her whole body shook with rage. She abandoned her cooking immediately and went straight to her husband's unit. With a workplace as confidential as theirs, background checks were extremely strict. If Daniel Shaw truly married someone with the blood of a traitor, then the lifelong careers of both Uncle Shaw and Auntie Fuang would be ruined. I went with Zachary Tang to his house. The Tang family had once been wealthy textile merchants. After liberation, they had donated their entire textile factory to the state without taking a single cent. Because of that extraordinary contribution, along with their ancestral expertise in weaving, once the factory was nationalized, Zachary's father became the factory director and his mother worked in the Women's Federation. As soon as his parents learned that mine were scientific researchers, their respect grew immediately, just like Zachary's reaction earlier. Mr. Tang personally carried several food containers back from the canteen: braised pork, sweet and sour spare ribs, duck stewed with potatoes, plus a few bottles of cold soda. Mrs. Tang smiled and said, "I'm not very good at cooking, but I've made a big pot of rice and reheated the lamb and radish soup from last night. I swear it was the most delicious lamb soup I had tasted in both of my lives." Seeing how much I enjoyed it, Mrs. Tang laughed. After hearing me mention how my parents were always busy with research and rarely home, she patted my shoulder kindly and said, "From now on, if your parents aren't around, just come eat with us. We have plenty of food. The only thing you might get tired of is lamb soup because we always have it." And so I ended up drinking lamb soup at the Tang household nearly every day for half a month. Then my brother called from his unit, telling me to come for a blind date he had arranged. Over the phone I blushed and stammered, "Brother, no need for a blind date. I've already found someone myself. Why don't you come home and meet him?" After everything with Daniel Shaw, my brother had completely lost faith in my judgment of people. That very evening, he immediately requested leave and came home. But when he saw Zachary Tang in person, he was left speechless. Handsome, well-mannered, and most importantly, our families were perfectly matched in status. Afraid Zachary might slip away, my brother decisively extended his leave for a few more days, insisting on personally accompanying Zachary and me to the committee office to apply for an introduction letter. Only after Zachary Tang and I received our marriage certificate did my brother feel reassured enough to return to his unit. After the certificate was in hand, Zachary and I went door to door delivering wedding candies. When we arrived at the Shaw household, we could hear loud arguments inside from far down the lane. It turned out Daniel Shaw had brought Claire White home, insisting on marrying her. Of course, Uncle Shaw and Auntie Fuang refused, but Daniel brazenly declared that Claire was already carrying his child, so he had no choice but to take responsibility. The Shaws quarreled bitterly until midnight. By the next morning, I heard the news that Uncle Shaw and Auntie Fuang had decided to publish an announcement in the newspaper declaring they were severing ties with Daniel. As a form of compensation, they gave him 500 yuan as marriage money, a kind of support for him to wed. Even though they cut him off, the fact remained that Claire White's father was a traitor, something that could never be changed. I heard Uncle and Auntie were called in by their superiors for questioning, then temporarily removed from their posts that involved national secrets. They were forced to sit idle. My father said that once tied to in-laws like the Whites, Uncle and Auntie would never again be allowed to take part in any confidential projects. To have such a foolish son like Daniel Shaw, this was truly the worst kind of misfortune. But the disasters did not stop there. A few months later, Daniel appeared at the gate of the staff housing compound looking ragged and worn out. The man who once looked down on those desperate to return to the city now wept as he begged his parents to help him secure a permit back at all costs. After I left for the city, Daniel had believed that as long as I wasn't there to stand in the way, he and Claire White could live a happy, perfect life together. But it didn't take long for him to discover how drastically things had changed. In the past, I often handed out cigarettes, liquor, tea, and candy to the village officials. Out of respect for me, they would assign Daniel light work with high wages. After I left, with his arrogant and conceited personality, Daniel naturally disdained flattering anyone. Very quickly, he was sent to do the heaviest and dirtiest tasks. When you went to confront the village officials, they calmly replied, "Claire White is the daughter of a counter-revolutionary. Before you married her, you were still considered the son of cottars. So you enjoyed some favoritism. Now that you've taken her as your wife, your family, to a counter-revolutionary, the fact that we don't send you off to a reform farm is already generous, and you still dare to dream of easy work with high pay." Only then did Daniel finally realize how serious things truly were. But it didn't stop there. Picnan was preparing to open a primary school in the village, and needed to recruit a few teachers. Daniel, always thinking of himself as exceptionally talented, believed teaching at a rural school would be nothing and that he could easily pass the test. But when the list of accepted candidates was posted, neither his name nor Claire's was on it. Furious, he dragged Claire to the commune office, demanding to see their test papers. The officials replied bluntly, "Even if the two of you had perfect scores, it would be useless. You are both family members of blacklisted backgrounds. You do not meet the political review requirements." At that moment, Daniel Shaw felt as if the sky had collapsed on him. As he left the commune, the way he looked at Claire White no longer held the tenderness it once did. Regret filled him. Regret that he hadn't listened to me and returned to the city when he still had the chance. Regret that in a fit of impulse, he had married the daughter of a counter-revolutionary. Daniel Shaw destroyed his own future with his own hands. After returning to the village one night while drunk and unable to control himself, he slapped Claire White across the face. Claire cried and ran straight to Ethan Miller, the production team leader. Ethan, who had always harbored a secret infatuation for Claire, exploded with fury when he heard that Daniel dared to lay a hand on his white moonlight. He stormed over to the educated youth station and beat Daniel until he was black and blue. From that day on, Daniel's life in the village became even more miserable. What enraged him even more was that despite all the sacrifices he had made for Claire, being disowned by his parents, burying his entire future and career, what did she do? After squandering the 500 yuan marriage money his parents had given him, she secretly rekindled her relationship with Ethan Miller. Daniel was furious and confronted her, but Claire calmly replied, There's nothing between Ethan and me. We're just two people who share the same ideals. Hearing those exact words nearly made Daniel vomit blood on the spot. Because years earlier, when I had questioned him about his relationship with Claire, Daniel had given me that exact same answer. Now that the boomerang had swung back and struck him, he finally knew what true pain felt like. Daniel demanded a divorce, but Claire said coldly, "Fine, I'll agree to divorce, but only if you help me secure a permit back to the city. If I can't return, then forget about leaving me. You'll be stuck with me here until we both rot in this village." Daniel had no choice but to request leave and return to the city to beg his parents for help getting a permit. After listening to his plea, Uncle Shaw let out a bitter laugh that was half rage. "Daniel, if you hadn't married Claire White back then, your mother and I would still be holding key positions in the research institute. Don't even talk about one permit. If you wanted 2 or 3, we could have managed it for you. But now, thanks to you and your wife, we've both been removed from our posts. Daniel Shaw, you've blocked your own path home with your own hands." The next time I heard news of Daniel was at the full-month celebration for my son with Zachary Tang. I was told that because Claire White stubbornly refused to divorce him, Daniel couldn't return to the city and had no choice but to remain entangled with her. But Claire was nothing more than a parasitic threat of fate, unable to survive on her own. In the past, she had relied on Daniel. The two of them had fed off me together. After I returned to the city and the Shaw family declined, Daniel could no longer support her lavish lifestyle. Very quickly, Claire found a few new male companions willing to spend money on her. That night, dressed in a pretty floral dress, she went with Ethan Miller to the grain drying yard to watch the moon. She never expected that Daniel would be secretly following behind. When Claire and Ethan slipped into a pile of straw in the yard, Daniel poured a ring of kerosene around it. Both kerosene and straw were highly flammable. As soon as the fire caught, the people inside had no way out. The flames roared for over an hour. When the fire finally died down, the villagers could only recover the charred remains of Ethan Miller and Claire White from the ashes. Their 2 bodies were burned beyond recognition. After committing the murders, Daniel Shaw didn't try to run. He went straight to the police and turned himself in, confessing the entire process of setting the fire and killing them. He made only one request. He wanted to see me one last time. I hadn't expected Daniel would truly be brought back. The moment he saw me, he went wild, lunging toward me with bloodshot eyes, shouting his accusations. "Emily, when you came back too, didn't you? Then why in this life didn't you force me to return to the city with you? Why did you leave me with that cheap woman, Claire White? Why?" I looked at him coldly. "Daniel Shaw, wasn't all of this your own choice? In my previous life, yes, I tried every way I could to bring you back to the city to help you escape Claire White's entanglement. But how did you treat me? Because you wanted to stay by her side. Because you were afraid I would tell your parents the truth. What did you do? You drugged me. You personally pushed me onto another man's bed." My gaze was sharp as poison, stabbing into his face as I hissed each word through clenched teeth. "Daniel Shaw, in this life, I didn't force you to return, and I didn't say a word to your parents. Everything turned out exactly the way you wanted. So what are you crying for?" Tears streamed down Daniel's face as he was consumed by regret. At that moment, all the rage and hatred I had carried across 2 lifetimes finally dissolved into nothing. I walked out of the detention center. Above me stretched a blue sky with white clouds, the soft spring breeze as gentle as a dream. Zachary Tang was waiting outside holding a bouquet of orange blossoms. Smiling, he said, "Here, this will sweep away all the misfortune. From now on, smooth sailing only." I accepted the flowers with a soft smile and nodded. That's right. After letting go of a worthless man, only good days lie ahead.